So I just went back and realized that I messed up the Day After Tomorrow and Robots review. The Day After Tomorrow is actually for Thursday, so if I've said Horton Hears a Who is for Wednesday, I'm sorry, because it's not, it's for Thursday. So Horton Hears a Who and The Day After Tomorrow are for Thursday, and Robots and The Happening are for Friday. So I don't know what I was thinking. I guess I was just tired when I made the review and messed up my days. Anyhow, so the second of Friday's reviews is The Happening. This was actually, I did enjoy this movie the first time I saw it, but I guess maybe it's because I just didn't really care that much about it or wasn't paying that much attention, but this was actually better than I thought, or better than I remember. I guess maybe it was because I watched it on my iPad the first time. It was kind of like on a site, and it was kind of crappy graphics, and it did make me jump a couple times, though. There were a couple jump scares in this movie. It is an M. Night Shyamalan movie, and most of his movies are, I mean, they're odd, no matter what M. Night Shyamalan movie it is. They're a little weird. So, basically, this is about this outbreak that starts happening in New York, I think, in Central Park, and these people start killing themselves, and nobody really knows why. They think it's some sort of toxin that terrorists have released into the air, and then as it slowly progresses, like as people start dying faster and faster and more rapidly, and the numbers start to grow, the news stations say that there's no way it can be terrorists, and Elliot Moore, this guy, played by Mark Wahlberg, him and his friends try to get away from the problem. Anyway, they basically evacuate the cities, and his one buddy goes back, unfortunately, and ends up dying because they find out later on in the movie that it's actually the plants that is creating this problem. The plants are releasing some sort of toxin into the air that's causing people to forget what they're saying, repeated speech, and then they freeze, and then they don't really know where they are, and they end up killing themselves in some sort of manner. At the beginning of the movie, you're not really sure what's going on, because all these construction workers start walking off a roof, and people start shooting themselves in the streets with a cop's gun, and so anyway, Elliot and Elma take Jess, his friend's kid, with them because he says that his friend says that they will be safer with him because he's going back into the city. And unfortunately, the larger populated areas seem to be hit first, and then it starts in smaller communities, and then in smaller groups. And if you're in too big of a group or two groups combined, that's when it starts to hit, because I'm not sure really how that worked. I guess it spread faster through the larger groups of people, but then eventually it gets to the point where it's only down to one person outside can be affected, and they run into this lady who literally segregates herself from the rest of the world because she thinks the world doesn't like her, and she doesn't like the world. She doesn't want to know what's going on, and it ends up getting her as well, because they're trying to find some place to get some food for Jess, and Elliot and Elma are actually together, or were together, and are slowly starting to fall back in love in this movie. And by the end of it, they are back together again. So I guess this is kind of like an almost odd love story in a way. But yeah, it was a different movie, I would say. When they're traveling through the field, there's a soldier that starts the wind picks up and blows whatever is causing the problem towards all these people, and they're split up into two or three groups, I think, at that point in time. But two of the groups are too close together, and they all end up dying. And what else was I going to say? They run into when they're first traveling, I guess, by train. It stops, and the train conductors say that they've lost communication with everybody, and they hide out there, and they see on the news station that they don't believe it's terrorists anymore. They believe it's something else. And then they run into these people who say that it could possibly be plants. And then when they find out that it actually is plants, they find out that that guy wasn't so crazy in his theory, that plants can actually communicate with one another and can release certain toxins into the air that could cause people to do certain things, I guess. It's kind of an odd aspect for a horror movie, but it was enjoyable. I would give this movie a 4 out of 5, just because I didn't really enjoy it the first time, and maybe it's because I didn't understand it as well as I did this time. I actually got to pay attention a little bit better this time around. So I think that's where I will leave off this review. Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel played Elliot and, sorry, just give me 1 second here. Elliot and Elma. And yeah, they definitely had to go through some stuff, because at the end of the movie, just before it switches over to the aftermath of the toxin, I guess you could say, they are talking through a pipe between these two rooms, and it sounds like you're right beside one another, but he says that if they're going to die, he wants to die with her. And when they go outside, you think they're going to be affected, but it ends up that they're not affected, which is good. And he says that it must have passed just before they went outside. So I'm not really sure how it worked. And then there's a little news report at the end of the movie saying that skeptics would believe that it wasn't the states trying to do it if it had happened somewhere else in the world. And then it does a shot of overseas, and I think probably Italy or something, and all of a sudden you hear this scream, and the one guy goes, "That startled me," and for the third time in a row, the guy says something about his bicycle, and then he looks behind him and everybody's frozen. So it is spreading. It just spreads one place at a time, I guess, is how it works. So I'm not really sure whether they're going to make a second one. I don't know. Couldn't tell you. I actually think that was probably a good way to leave off the movie, just because it would be hard to do a sequel to this. Anyhow, so that's where I will leave off this review. I know I've messed up in some of my other reviews beforehand, but they will be uploaded on the right day, whether I say the wrong thing or not. So I am sorry about that. But yeah, Wednesday's review is of Entrapment. So if I say Wednesday or the wrong day in any other videos, I'm terribly sorry. But they will be uploaded on the right day. So Horton Hears a Who, the day after tomorrow, is Thursday. And Robots and the Happening will be Friday. And then I'm going to start watching Space Chimps right now. So bye-bye for now.